Hey, real quick, I would love to introduce you to today's guest. I cannot wait for this phenomenal conversation to unfold. I'm so excited for you to listen to today's episode of the Creativ Rise podcast. But I would love to ask you this question. Do you ever wonder what people like today's guest, like Chris Hau, people who have phenomenal six-figure businesses, who are sustainable, sturdy, creative businesses that are allowing them to live a life they love, what are the pillars that their businesses stand on? Like, what are they doing that so many people are not doing? What are the things they know that you might not know, that maybe at one time I did not know? Well, the answer is actually there's simple things that are foundational to growing any six-figure creative business that most of the time you probably don't know because simply no one's ever taught you them. Now, at Creativ Rise, we are all about empowering creatives to grow their businesses by focusing on the business side of what they do, learning more about business so they can actually grow a business. And we have an upcoming training teaching you all about the 3 pillars that we think are foundational to any six-figure business. It's a free live training, August 23rd, 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. Our whole community is going to be there. It's our gift to you, completely free. I would love to invite you as well. All you got to do is go to creativrise.com/six-figure creator, or just hit the link in the description of this podcast or this YouTube video if you're watching it there. And you'll see the link there. You can sign up for free. I would love to see you join the rest of our community as we debunk some of the pillars that are just foundational, again, to building a business that will allow you to live a life you love because you're getting to do what you love every day and succeed at it. So I would love to invite you to that. Again, that's called the Six-Figure Creator Live Free Training. Teaching on 3 pillars that will really help you build a more profitable and successful business this upcoming year, which is so exciting. Now, let's talk about today's guest. Chris Hau is a friend, somebody that I've wanted to get on the show for a long time. This episode, guys, is so phenomenal. I want to intro you to Chris, and I'm going to talk about what I loved about the episode. So Chris is a filmmaker, photographer, creative director from Toronto, Canada. He's a storyteller crafting innovative and engaging content for the digital landscape, and that's basically his fancy way of calling himself a YouTuber and an Instagrammer. Now, Chris has been featured in so many crazy places like Good Morning America, Huffington Post, Mashable, all these crazy stuff. But he's also worked with massive brands like Mercedes-Benz, Adobe, Corona, Grey Goose, Google. And it's not just working in like a very traditional sense. He's done some incredibly creative, unique projects with massive brands. The dude's got over like 1.2 million followers across all of his platforms. I've really admired what Chris has built. He's built so many different avenues of businesses over the last couple of years, and we get into all of that on today's podcast. But what I love about Chris is he's not all just about the things that have gone well. Chris is very open and very communicative about the things that have felt more like friction as he's built his business than is what has felt easy. In today's episode, he talks a lot about some of the struggles of growing a creative business, of being a YouTuber. And I think that is where you're going to get so much value. There's so much value in the things that have worked for Chris. There's also so much value in the things that have felt tough, difficult, and felt like friction that Chris has experienced as he's built his creative business. I know you're going to love the episode. I cannot wait for you to hear the entire thing. Make sure you listen all the way through the end. It just gets better and better. So here's my conversation with Chris Hau. Chris Hau, my friend, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Creativ Rise podcast, man. It's been a long time coming that I've wanted to get you on here.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Okay, so Chris, we've talked about this before, but I'm just going to mention it again. Obviously, this podcast exists to lift creators up, and we do that by talking about business. I know we're both probably aware of the fact that you have to be super creative in order to be successful in this space, but you also have to understand business to a certain mark, and that's what the show exists for. So I'm so glad you're on here. I cannot wait to ask you some questions about your story, YouTube, growing your own businesses, what you were doing prior to YouTube, everything like that. So, dude, good to have you on the show. But we always start off with a little bit of rapid fire. So right off the bat, let us know. It's pretty explanatory for everyone who knows who you are, but where are you from?
I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, but I did grow up a little bit north of the city. There's this community of like Aurora, Newmarket, which seems to be this like, I don't know if this is the right word, but I'm going to just say it anyway. It's like this like cesspool of like creativity. Like, I don't know what it is, but there's just so many people that have come out of Aurora, Newmarket, like legendary people from like Jim Carrey to like this huge community on YouTube, whether it's Peter McKinnon, Jesse Driftwood, Matty Opoya. Like there just seems to be there's something in the water up there, man.
Yeah, dude, it's like that Keswick to Stouffville, Markham area. It just like, there's the whole thread of you guys. That's so funny. So I actually grew up just north of you guys. I was on the other side of Simcoe, past Barrie. It's so funny how small of a world the creative scene is, especially when it comes to the Canadian one. Okay, so Chris, this is always a funny question for people to answer. You might have a phenomenal answer for this, but if you're in an elevator and someone asks, Chris, what do you do? What do you tell them?
I like to, so there was two versions of this in the past. There was the one that I think was a little bit more like ego driven and had to like prove things to people.
Yeah.
Where it was more like, I'm a full-time YouTuber, and I also am a creative director at an agency. We make commercials for like Mercedes-Benz, Corona. Like that was more of like the sales pitch that existed previous to like wanting to prove myself to people. And I think that came from a place of like, it's tough. It's like, you could say that it came from a place of insecurity, but it is just business. Like at the end of the day, it's just going totally. Like, here, let me just tell you what's going on so that, you have an understanding of what I do, so that if something did come up in the future, maybe we'd be a good fit for it. So sometimes that pitch comes in the right context. But now if people just ask, I like to just be like, I collect pixels and put them on the internet. And I make fun internet videos, which is a more like softer version of what I'm doing, because there's such a combination of that. And some people don't understand that. And so I have to it's really contextual, like whoever I'm talking to.
Yeah, of course.
It's like a mix, right? So I think, the more like, if I was to give you a more average answer, it'd probably just be like, I'm a full-time YouTuber. I tell stories online and I make travel content and tech content. And so that's like the simpler way of putting it. But the reality is I do wear like a lot of different hats, and I'm someone who is a Enneagram type 3 achiever type of person with like ADHD, which is like the perfect combination of someone who just likes to do a lot of things and experience a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to sum it up, right? It's a perfect storm of just wanting to experience a lot of the world and then do those things. And so it's hard to create an identity that isn't just wrapped up in being like, I like to do it all. Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Because people don't also understand that you have to sell. You need to niche down, or people don't get it.
Yeah, totally. Well, so I'm very similar. I'm like an Enneagram 8 wing 7 with ADHD, diagnosed ADHD. We're in the same boat, everything there. I said this actually, I was at like a business lunch the other day for something, and somebody asked me, they said like, what's a fact no one would know about you? We were going around the table, and I said, well, fact among me is I've never had actually a real job. I started working for myself when I was 14, and I'm still doing it, And it's funny because they were saying, well, what were you doing? And I was like, well, I've kind of done like 10 different things. I'm always, every like 2 years, it's like evolving a little bit. And I'm assuming you're very similar. That leads us into the next rapid fire question. When did you actually first start your creative business? And define what business that was, because you've been through some cycles.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a camera in my hand since I was like 8 years old. And then like, first time I ever got paid for something, I was like, I think 16. And that was just a gift card, for $50 somewhere in exchange for filming some like content of my friend Rachel, like on her horse for like a school project or something. Like the mom gave it to me. But that was like the first exchange of value, which also is like a significant time. I don't know if I'd call that a business, but it does plant a seed for where things would kind of go in the future. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think when I used to play music back in the day. So, my business from a creative standpoint used to be selling like two things, which was like performance. I'd go and play live, and I would like, hawk my CDs after the shows. Like every single time I go up to every single person that came, and I just tell them that I had a CD, and then I would just like hustle like crazy. So like that was like one form of the business. And then I had like a recording studio in my parents' basement where I recorded like a country band for like, I made their whole album one time. So like my first creative business where I did an exchange of like creativity for money, and then maybe called that a business, would be like a music studio and being an artist. And then as I started to like, out of the basements, and then I started to film videos, and then that kind of turned into being like, I'm creating a video business. And then I used to be a lifeguard for the town of Newmarket, which we referred to earlier. And then I made some videos for the town of Newmarket's like aquatics department. And then, they got shown at the town hall, and then the mayor came up and he's like, you're really good at this. Here, talk to communications. I think we can pay you the same as a lifeguard, but go and make some videos. And so worked for the communications department for like 9 months, made a couple of videos that went viral in the government space. And then it was like that, I think, was like the true marker of like an actual legitimate business where like I created like a sole proprietorship and like started to get HST numbers because
Mhm.
my videos went viral in government, and I just started getting all of these like
Yeah,
government
all the
clients.
agencies. Yeah.
And so like all of a sudden the city of Hamilton and the town of Richmond Hill and all these
Yeah.
other like I built a niche in like municipal video production, and it
Yeah.
was basically just videos of people smiling, and then eventually it started to get into like, here's a video about how wastewater management works, and like, so I
Yes,
know all
of
these like
course.
random things about how towns operate just because of my like background
Yeah.
in
Okay,
that. But
that's
that, I would say
so
I was
funny.
about 19 when that happened.
Okay, 19 years old, small town, big business. Big
Yeah, yeah.
deals, small town. I love it.
Yeah.
That's so funny because I've worked with a couple different government agencies like Tourism Barry and some other things like that. And they're interesting to work with. Like working in the
Yeah.
government space as a creative is a very interesting thing. So kudos to you for being able to do so much of that. So 19 years old is when you would classify your first like creative business with a camera and perspective started. When did you
Yeah.
go full time? Was that when you went full time, or when did you actually go like, this is my one thing, this is going to be my career? When was that moment for you?
Yeah, it was around that like 19, 20-year old ish, 21, like somewhere in there. I know that's a pretty big spectrum to consider, but I haven't reflected on that for a while. But, I was in third year of university when I was making like decent money doing that, where I was like, I'm making between $40,000 to $60,000 a year. Like that is an entry level salary out of the gate
Mm-hmm.
with so much potential. And I'm doing that myself. Like, I'm
Yeah.
landing at the time. It was like a project for like $5,000 for a video. And like, that was a lot of money at that age, especially. And
100%.
so, I knew what it had. I knew what the potential of it was. And it was conflicting because I was also in school, and school was such a complicated time because our teachers always referred to it as like, we were in like a state of aporia when everything was happening in terms of the media industry, like the traditional media industry and, radio and television was really changing. Like I was making YouTube videos and YouTube content at that time, and I'm teaching the teachers about what's kind of going on. And so there's like a new wave of new media. Like they've even created a new program at like the school that I went to is like the new media program. It didn't exist when I
Mm.
was there. And it's because
Yeah.
this was like so I was conflicted because I didn't know what was happening at school. I didn't feel like I was getting a ton of value, learning more traditional things, which are valuable
Mm.
now, oddly enough, in my career. But at the
Mm.
time, I didn't really understand the value. And so to answer your question without tangenting on for like hours on end, I was third year university, that 19, 20-year old, where I was like,
Yeah.
I could do I know I can do this full time.
I can do this. Yeah. Dude, what a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to be able to figure that out pretty young, right? And not only figure out that's what you want to do, but actually have metrics to back up that, oh, this is actually possible. Like this is like you said, 40 to 50 grand. Like that's an entry level decent job as someone coming out of
Yeah.
university. Okay. So what was your first company called?
It's still the same name now, which is really fun. It's Know How Media Inc., but Know How
Okay. That's
Media,
what I
just
thought
a,
it
a
was.
play on my last name. And it's
Yeah.
so funny. Just on a quick side tangent, I'm starting a couple of like other companies that are like, and they're all just how puns. Like I want it to be
Mm-hmm.
my legacy is just all the companies I own are how puns
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
some
No, I've seen
capacity,
that.
not
Okay.
all of them, but some of them.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask because I'm like, man, I feel like 5 years ago I saw maybe it was like an agency site, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And I was like, that's such a funny
Yeah.
play on his last name. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, talk to me about your first couple of deals. So many people that listen to the show are in the $10,000 to $15,000 per year range. They really want to learn how to become a full-time creator. And for a lot of people, the most leverage we have in the beginning is within the people around us, the opportunities around us. And I know you said your first deal was, kind of shooting some stuff for some government agencies in your area. Talk to me about looking back on that moment now. What do you think you did well that led to you getting some work locally, which eventually set the foundation for you to build the first business you started at 19?
Yeah, what it is, and I think this is always like a really good thing to pay attention to is where is something in someone's process at a company that can be improved upon. And so, I kind of lucked out at the time where, a lot of government agencies, like YouTube was a thing, and like more of the more popular brands were already on it, but like government just works slower. Like it's just a machine with a lot of red tape that takes like 5 years to catch up. They're always just 5 years behind everything. So at that time when I graduated, I kind of saw like an opportunity where like the video production job didn't exist for people. So the government was, really looking for freelance people to do this type of thing. So I saw an opportunity to build a company around the idea that, here's a niche that no one else has really tapped into yet. I can do this well. And like, you don't even have to do it like that well. Like, I think I used to say that, all my friends were doing music videos. And so those music videos would be compared against other people's music videos. So there's something like to directly compare it against. But in my case, it's like, there's no government videos. And if there was, they were horrible. And so it was pretty easy to like stand out at the time. And another great analogy, it was like, I was like a sponsored wake surfer, and wake surfing was like a very new sport.
Super
so like
new.
You didn't have to be like overly good at it to like excel and like create opportunity. Like I was landing shove-its, and all of a sudden I'm sponsored by like the world's best board company. And it's really like trying to see like, where are there opportunities and things that, and that's happening all the time, even just a couple of years ago, like nobody was on TikTok. So you could have been the person that came along and been like, here, I can do your TikTok well while the algorithms are still good. And then you can create a job for yourself. And so that exists is like really just paying attention to whether or not you can add value somewhere by either like making something better, whether that's like better strategy, better visuals, better storytelling, whatever your strength might be, really paying attention, and then just even acknowledging it to the company. It's my brain can't not think like this on the regular basis. I was getting my car washed, and this is like a really funny analogy, but just an example of being like, you could create things for yourself out of nothing. Getting my car washed, the guy was like, it's going to take about 20 minutes to get the car washed. Go across the street to like the European grocery store, and I walk in, and I was like, everyone else at the car wash is just sitting there. Like 10 people are sitting waiting for their cars. I was like, imagine there was just a coupon code that said like 10% off at the European grocery store.
Genius.
And that was just a deal. And then all of a sudden those people walk in, I'm telling the European grocery, like, that's a good idea. Thanks for noticing something that could increase business for us. Because I'm just looking like there's a missed opportunity. So like pay attention to the missed opportunities.
It's the gaps. Dude. We love that. We talk about that at Creativ Rise all the time, because that's all business is, right? Business is just seeing a gap, figuring out who needs the gap filled, and simply learning how to provide a solution for them. And you'll get paid every single time. Like, business is a lot simpler than it was, or at least that I cracked it up to be when I was like 14 and I started my first video agency. I thought it was way more complex than I actually realized it is. The older I get, the more simple I realize it is. So I love that. I love that you just mentioned that. Let's go into that for a second, because I get asked this question all the time. People write in, or they DM us on, from an episode they listen to on the show, and they say, hey, like, how do you find gaps? And I know, Chris, you said that it's just a very natural thing for you. You're probably wired a little bit more that way, or you've been conditioned more that way than a lot of other people have potentially been. But how do you actually, like, what are the glasses that you put on, and what do you think makes up those glasses that you put on that allows you to see the world with that problem-solving perspective? Because it sounds like from a young age, you've just looked around and gone, oh, where are there opportunities that either have gaps I can fill, or where are there opportunities that are just, there's not even other people operating in that space? Like you said, in the wake surfing example, like there wasn't a ton of people at that time probably doing what you were doing on that type of board. And so this company was like, oh my gosh, we got to hook you up, right? Or in the government agencies, like there wasn't a ton of people doing videos. How do you find those opportunities that maybe are less crowded? Because I think a lot of creatives feel like every opportunity they could ever get into is crowded these days.
Yeah, I think it's really just like as simple as like sometimes you got to even do like the opposite of what everyone else is doing. Maybe this is not like the perfect example, but I shot the Fall Out Boy and Bring Me the Horizon concert on Sunday night. And basically, there's this one photographer that invited me out, and his style is amazing. And I was like, I don't want to just do what he's doing. I'm not going to bring a flash and copy that. And then I don't want to just take standard concert photos. It's kind of boring to me. What can I do that's like different and unique so that it stands out? So I think a lot of the times is like, one, as a creative, like, there's two ways you can look at things. It's like, oh, okay, somebody's walked through the forest with a lantern, just follow their light, and you're most likely to be able to, find some sort of version of success. But I always find it's like a diminishing return, where it's like if the other person took the risk to go and do it first, you'll probably have like the half-life of the success that they had. But it's still like riding the coattails of someone else's success could still be a lot. Like if someone's making $1 million and you walk in, you see the opportunity and you're like, I could do that. then, $500,000 also sounds pretty
Yeah,
exciting too, right?
sounds decent. Yeah.
Sounds great, right? But you have to also pay attention to those like opportunities too, and have like, there's still risk in that, because if, for every other person that went in and followed the lantern of someone else's, again, it's just like it halves every single time, to the point where you're just literally doing what everyone else is doing. And that's like a thing to really pay attention to yourself. So it's like, one is like, can you do something different, or can you take like a different concept from something else and like bring it into like what everyone else is doing? Like, can you like flip it on its head in a different way, or like, can you use a different instrument, or can you, right? So whatever it might be. I'm trying to even remember what I was going with, like the second point of that. If you can just remind me of your like position.
Yeah, well, I was
you were
just
talking
saying,
about,
like,
the glasses that you wear.
Yeah, like you mentioned the fact that the perspective you have is a problem-solving perspective. You look at the world, you look at industries, you look at clients, you look at your skill set and go, where are the gaps? How can I fill those? And I'm wired very similarly, and that typically comes quite easy for me as well. But a lot of people, it's a muscle that's not natural for them. And so for people listening to the show, outside of what you just said, I love that you just said, there's going to be people you can either, you said there's two ways. You can either follow the person with the lantern through the forest, or the second one is you create your own lantern.
Yeah,
you
you create your own lantern, and really try to take the risks. Like, it's one of those things that's really interesting, where everyone's trying to like avoid risk at the end of the day, but risk is really where, like, in my opinion, is where all of the success in my life has ever been. And you have to throw the dart at the wall a bunch of times before you hit a bullseye, right? And so it's one of those things that I just think that repurposing like a different concept and bringing it to like a new industry can be like a whole new way of just like looking at something. But really, it's like paying attention to, because in our world now, things are changing so quickly all the time.
Fast,
so it's like every single day it could be a brand new opportunity to be like, okay, the Instagram strategy is not working, so let's go and do this strategy, or let's go and find it, or actually no, it's back up again. So let's pour more like money on the fire, or put more energy back into Instagram, because all of a sudden the algorithms are back up there.
And so like, photos are a thing again. Oh my gosh, go.
Yeah. Right. So it's really like paying attention to things, trying to act like fast on them, but really like taking the risks for yourself, because I think it's really natural for creative people to follow a recipe for something else because they know it will do well. And I think it's like, the more that you can inherently, especially as like a creator, listen to whatever like your true voice is, or experiment and bring something, like that's where like your real value is going to come in at the end of the day. Like, we go to school and we learn all these like different processes, which are like valuable. If you're running a production company, there's certain things you need to learn how to do, but what's going to make you stand out is really like your own voice, your own visual representation of how you make something, the way you storytell, like wherever your strength is, try to lean into that, and really like try to step outside of your comfort zone of like what you will do well and what will get the money, and maybe take some more creative risks, and or just reinvest back into yourself, so that there's attention and eyeballs that will go on your own projects, and then that will lead to what you really want. But yeah, paving, you can follow the lantern, or you can light your own candles. So I think that's those are kind of my two perspectives there.
I love it. What's a risk you're proud of yourself for taking? You're talking about risk. What's one you're proud that you took?
We had a successful agency previous to the YouTube career, and I just kept going ham on trying to make the social media thing work, whether it was like Facebook video, but like really, like I was still even hedging my bets too. Like I still had, and I will acknowledge like the privilege of just having a network that already was like established, so I didn't have to like worry too much about like taking the risk on YouTube. There was always still risk, because at the end of the day, I was like full-time agency, and then I'm taking the risk to run a full-time YouTube channel, and I'm just working all the time. And in your brain, you're not even really as present. So at the end of the day, now you say like, 80 hours a week you're working, but like reality is like, it's like just on all the time. And
all the time. Yeah.
When you're in your own little bubble, it can feel even more like overwhelming. But anyways, I would say I'm really proud of taking the risk of doing the YouTube career, of building like the Chris Hau identity / brand online.
Personal brand.
Personal brand, because, and it's funny because now I'm getting excited about building brands for everybody, and like letting everybody win. But at the time, I'm really excited about that because this vehicle is going to be a launching point for the success of those things.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so building brands for everybody, we the creators. I want to talk about that in a little bit, but quickly, let's jump into YouTube. So that's probably what most people know you for, right? Most people walking down the street wouldn't say, "Oh, I know Chris Hau for Know How Media," even though that was, like you said, your first venture, and that's really cool that you had an established, safe option of staying in an agency format, and you decided to really go all into YouTube. So talk to me about switching because, and I know it was probably a long transition period, or maybe it wasn't, but I know there's a lot of people that listen to the show that maybe even are shooting weddings. That's what a lot of people started in, as I know, right? Shooting 20 to 30 weddings a year. And all of a sudden they're like, I want to be a YouTuber or I want to do commercial work. But the fear of the unknown of, I don't know how it's going to work. Do I have enough relationship capital in those areas? Can I even commit to myself doing it? Stops them from ever doing it. You made that jump from an agency to a full-time YouTuber. Talk to me about the fear that was present in that moment, that transition, that season, and how did you navigate that? Because that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it was definitely scary. Like I there's a couple of things I'll touch base on. One being the conversation with my parents. Another one with my wife Lizzie about like the transition that was going on there, and then also just the fear of like judgment from people. So like let's just jump into like the parent one. Like it's always interesting. Like you have the success of a company that's like doing fairly well. Like I was making like six figures comfortably through that agency when I made the choice to start the YouTube thing. And so there's fear that exists in the judgment of like just putting it online because I know what it's like. I know the conversations. Like I had some like videos go viral in the past where I was surfing and playing guitar, and like I think I just like whether or not I projected this or not, but reading some of those comments where people are like, "This is ridiculous. This guy's just trying to like get attention," and blah 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 blah. Like those things hurt and like they stick with you, and you get messages from people. So like there's like a real fear in how people perceive you, especially as someone like at that time that cared very deeply about like what other people thought about me and needed validation from like strangers online to feel like worthy. Like that was something I've worked through over the years, but at that time it was like really important. So like, in the same way that like jumping into YouTube was fueled by like wanting validation, it was also like terrified of that validation.
100%.
Right. And so I remember talking to my parents and they were like, yeah, like you should do it. But like, there's always like that little comment that's like, but you don't forget about this company that you have too. Like, and you're like, don't, and then you have this, like, it's your parents are always like, don't tell me what to do. Right. And so there's always a little bit of that at the end of the day. And then the other thing is like, at the time, Lizzie and I were running this company together. And so she hadn't made the decision to want to like jump into YouTube yet. That was like a decision that came like 9 to 12 months after I was doing it, where, at the same, she could hedge her bets and being like, I want to do this, or I see a gap because there's not that many women in this space. So I want to go and pursue that. So, there was really difficult times where we had like, I was starting to get some success from the YouTube stuff that I was doing where, maybe let's call it like I did a brand deal and it was like for $2,000, but I could make $2,000 in a day versus like doing one job for like a corporate client that took like 3 weeks to complete. And maybe that's, so much stress and it's only like $6,000 to $8,000. And maybe the numbers are similar, but then you have to split it and it has a bunch of expenses. Like here is like, I filmed a video in an afternoon, edited that evening and made 2,000 USD at the time. And I got to do something and talk about something that I wanted. And I also got paid for my YouTube stuff. And I got affiliates. And that video still makes money today. Like there's a lot of like layers to that where I was like, now I'm excited about it. And then more and more of those jobs were coming. I was like, damn, I can make like $4,000 a week, $4,000 a week. Damn, that's like $16,000 a month USD. Holy, oh man, like this is crazy. Where it's like now I'm running the company, and I remember like distinctly we were like in our condo, and I like had like a breakdown on like working on a project for the agency thing about this boring banking video that we were doing, and I was like, I couldn't bring myself to edit it at the time. Also, I hadn't like dealt with my ADHD. I hadn't dealt with like elements of my ego and elements of my depression. And so, I just remember like feeling paralyzed when I was like,
Mm.
I just want to do this. And then Lizzie being like, we run a company together. You're literally abandoning it
Mm.
if you're just trying to do this. Or if you want, let go and like, let me run more of the company because
Yeah,
I
I
need
got
this. Right. And so there was a lot of like conflicting moments and fear and stresses that existed in that where like I know that I was being selfish, but I at that time it's like I wanted to do that and I didn't know how to navigate the transition period. And also I was 26. Like I don't know, I didn't know what I was doing. And like here's a career that like is not established. Like at that time there's not even agencies. Like I'm the one dealing with brand deals and like the money is like it's good, but it's still like not a thing. Like now
Like
like
the YouTube
YouTubers are
scene was,
YouTubers,
what you
right?
weren't,
Like
if you rocked up and said,
you
oh, I'm a
tell someone
YouTuber,
now,
people are like, what is that?
yeah,
Got you.
yeah, 26. I remember being in, and people are like, yeah, you make money with that. What's that? What's that job? And now you tell
Yeah.
someone, you're like, I'm a YouTuber. They're like, whoa, what's going on?
They're like, oh,
people
my kids
know.
want to be
It's
that.
totally,
Yeah.
it's a very different world. And so there's fear in like the identity of it. There's fear in the risk of being like, well, is my career only built on distribution or is my career built on the fact of like, is there longevity in this? Is there longevity in my
100%.
agency?
Yeah.
Am I letting my clients down by doing this? Am I risking losing clients because now I'm telling stories about how I'm getting them and then they might not want to work? Like there's so many things that like pop through your head. And you don't even realize like the repercussions that it could have on like the relationships that you have and all these other things that are around you, right?
Yeah.
And that
totally.
So
I love that.
I
So
think I answered most
yeah,
of
you
your...
did. No, that was amazing.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, because you really just told the story, a small snippet of the story of what the transition felt like and some of the challenges you had. With all that being said, if you were to transition again, speak to the person who's sitting here going, I'm listening to this episode with Chris and Joey, and Chris is talking about transitioning. I'm a wedding photographer and I want to switch to being a commercial, or I'm in the commercial space and I want to become a personal brand and get on YouTube, get on whatever it's going to be. What would you tell that person now, or even make it about yourself, Chris? What would you tell Chris at 26 who was going through all those challenges as you were transitioning with open eyes and I'm sure open hands? You were holding it open because you didn't know what the longevity
like
of any
leap
of it was going
faith.
to be.
But I've always been
it was
that
a leap
person
of faith.
that's like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So what would you tell Chris at that moment now, knowing everything you know about it now? What advice would you give yourself to do it again?
I think one of the things that I don't know if I hold shame around it, but like one of the things is like the success. Just be patient. Like the success is coming, and like you don't need to rush it. Like you will hit your financial goals. You will hit whatever like vanity numbers you want, and you will not be like happier or there's elements I feel more stable because of the finances, but I'm not like happier because of them. And so like I've always said that I could have hit my success like what I was rushing towards like 2 or 3 years later and really had still been just as happy and content. And so making sure that I'm like prioritizing the people in your life and the relationships. But that's more of like for me. The other thing is like if we're going back to like actual practical like information and feedback that like for somebody that might be listening, it's like I've always leaned on the side of like I read the lean startup, and it's like make something and like don't be afraid to just go and like do it, but then take like the data points. Like it's easy to like let a dream be a dream and just sit on the dream and let it always be there. But it's like if you're someone who's like, let's say you're a photographer and you want to transition into YouTube and you're like, I want to do the jump. It's like, well, one, create enough data points to prove that you could potentially do this. Right. And so don't just be like, I'm going to blindly become a YouTuber now. Like make the YouTube videos, have markers of success that are important to you, collect that data and go, okay, I made $100 off that YouTube video. That means that $100 could be 200. It could be 400. It could be 1,000. Right. And so create enough data points for you to be like, to hedge your bets on like it being a successful thing for you. Cause there will be a point where like the workload across the board for like your commercial work or whatever you're doing and your YouTube stuff, you can be able to like let go of certain clients. And I think just make it more of a transition thing. Like you don't need to jump in all at once. And that's something that I kind of did is like, I just let more and more of the agency go as I did more and more of the YouTube stuff. So it was like a tipping of the scale and like a handoff. But one of the things that I would just say is like, one, therapy, like really like figure out your why. as to why you
Yeah.
need to do something. Like I was very like ego driven. Like I needed validation from people until like that stemmed from, videos not doing well, and I would delete them because I didn't like the vanity of like having an unsuccessful video. Whereas like, I just released a video like last week and it got like 4,000 views. Like that would have just crippled me 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Whereas now I'm like, well, it's just the way it is. I made the video. I learned a bunch of stuff. Like I have new metrics to like mark my success from. So I would say like, if we're tying this all back into like the advice for me or the advice for the people that are listening, it's like create realistic data points for you so that you can like write them down and be like, I landed 10 brand deals this year while I was still running my commercial job. Though 10 of that, having 10 means that it could mean having 20, or it can mean having 50. And like, and if the more that you like put time into them, you're like, well, if I am only putting in 10 hours of work this week and I got 10 brand deals, this, whatever you want to say, that means if I put in 40 hours, I should in theory be able to get 40, and then minimize your expenses. Like you don't need, and then my biggest thing is that, and this is a lesson which may or may not be related, but I really like stand by this, is that I wish I invested more into the creative of a video than trying to maximize the profits. Because I wish, and I think like I would be short-sighted in being like, I could squeeze an extra $1,000 out of a project, or like $500 out of a project, versus just like renting the cooler car, or, spending the money to stay one extra day in X place, or paying the person who does graphics what they're worth so that they're not like mad later on down the line, or whatever it might be. Like I was the person that tried to like run a business as like bootstrapped and like maximize my profits. Whereas like, I think if I just made it less about me and how much money I could have squeezed out, I could have, one, made better things that I was even more proud of. And two, those videos would go on to have like greater impact on people.
Yeah,
and I also don't want to like, I'm not beating myself up. Like I look back on my YouTube career and like when I meet people and they're like, hey, your videos changed my life, I run a business now because of this. Like obviously they still had impact. Like I'm probably just being hard on myself in this state. But if I was to pinpoint things about that, I would go back and say like, it didn't matter. Like I could have paid for the extra gaffer on set. I could have paid for the extra lighting. I could have paid for the things that like would have made the final product better, which ultimately would have made me more money long-term.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
It's a
like,
brand
I'm in that
play,
state
right?
now.
Yeah, totally. It's a like your input, your financial input into every video in the YouTube space. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the financial input you put into every video it's got a multiplier on it. And it's got a brand multiplier on it. So it's like the more financial input into every piece of content that goes out there, the brand is, if it's decent, it's going to be multiplied 10x versus 3x on, only spending a fraction of what you could have spent. So that's interesting. And we're seeing that now, right? And I don't think we, and I'm not a YouTuber, but being someone who's consumed a lot of YouTube and is obviously knows a ton of YouTubers like yourself, we're living in the golden era, I feel like, of that now, where that is very apparent. Like, like the Mr. Beast stuff, spending $1 million on a video, $2 million on a video. Like, I feel like 5 years ago, that was just unheard of. It was like trying to maximize all profits, like you said. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about YouTube, because I think this is fascinating. It's a really cool combo. So what does a YouTuber do? And I'm asking this in a very dumbed down way because I want you to just run with this. But for someone who's like, okay, Chris, this could be a real dream for me. Yeah. How do you make money, and what do you do every day to build this into a career? Like, you're posting, how many times a week are you posting? In order to post that many times per week, what do you have to do? Do you have certain days that are full creative days that are full business days? Like, do you have a team? How quickly did you build a team? Talk me through all that stuff.
Yeah, I would say being a YouTuber is essentially like running a business, like full stop. And I think in the same way that you run like a photo business where your primary deliverable is like photos, there's also like a bajillion other hats that you have to wear, where it's like you're also the accountant, and you're also the manager, and you're also the editor, and you're also this X, Y, and Z. And so like you're doing all of those things. So like, yeah, I would always just say at the end of the day, like running a YouTube channel is literally like running a media company, like a broadcasting channel, in the same way that you
100%.
would watch like the morning show. You were just every person on the morning show,
Yes.
right? You're the camera operator until you're at the point where you can hire out a team, like someone like, Linus Tech Tips, who has like commercial assets, and like I think there's like 80 to 100 people on the team or something like that. Like, this is nuts. Like a YouTube channel with like, and so the same with Mr. Beast. Like, it's like that's a media enterprise now with
Enterprise.
employees,
Empire. Yeah.
right? Like empire, right? Whereas like, you're a small business. You're like a local television show that like, has all of the moving parts that need to do that. So like my day-to-days are like very different. Like, when I first started, I was doing it all, and then it started to shift into being like, okay, I can't be on all of the phone calls for the brand deals and managing expectations and getting it, like, it's just coming too much. So like, let's bring an agent on board, or let's have somebody represent me that can like bring in more brand deals, but I don't have to be on the call, so I can like spend more time on the creative. And then at some point you're like, I'm bottlenecking on editing, so like I hired a freelance editor. And then as that started to get busier and he got better at his job, I scaled him up and then hired him full time. And then that's it. So like right now, I would say that the primary workers is like, I have kind of two agents, but one like primary agent that's doing like almost all of my like brand deal work, let's say. And then there's me, who is like creative director / like on screen talent and script writer.
Yeah. Like the actual
and then
brand.
the brand. And then I have like Lucas, my editor, who wears a couple different hats, but primarily is like editing and shooting some videos, but also has become like a right hand man in like the business, in the sense that, I consult with him on a lot of the decisions. But
Yeah. There's trust.
I'm even wanting to bring in like a brand manager now. Like, I want to bring in somebody who can just like help me build that. Like, I'm building courses, I have digital products, I have physical products, I'm doing trips, I'm working with brands, I'm building out my own things, I'm making videos, I'm doing short form content, I'm doing photo content, I'm trying to connect with people, I'm trying to do PR. Like, we're having this call right now. Like, it's a lot of
It's a lot of
stuff,
stuff. 100%.
right? And like, and somebody who has ADHD, like, it's not always like the healthiest thing. Like, it can feel overwhelming, and like I constantly battle like and trying to be on TikTok and Instagram and Threads and Twitter, and feeling like
Checking
you're
all the
everywhere, and like
boxes. Yeah.
checking all the boxes and feeling like you're showing up, and then making good content too. And then the self analysis about all. And then you're like also running a company that has like metrics and deliverables. And then I also am building out other companies. Like, sometimes I need to like give myself more credit for like how much is kind of going on for everything. Cause I beat
Absolutely.
myself up a
Yeah.
lot on it, where I just need to like look back and be like, well, don't forget, like, this is all dope shit, and like, this is a really great thing. And what I'm just trying to remind myself, and it kind of comes back to what we were talking about before, it's just like investing in the other areas. Like, I was like, I think I need to bring on like a junior producer who can just, I can be like, hey, we're doing this video for Hasselblad. I need you to get me like a Porsche and 2 models, and like organize the locations and get the permits. And like, and we're shooting Wednesday, and coordinate with Lucas to let him know that
Yep.
the edit needs to be in by like Tuesday. And like,
Yeah.
just get it done. Right. And then
100%.
I can go on to do that stuff rather than me like texting. But it's hard because sometimes like my voice is also like what I've recognized in my strengths, and what I'm trying to do in everything that's going on right now is my strengths are in my like creative ideas, on-screen talent, photography, editing of photos, and then my network. So how do I just do that?
Yeah.
And then everything else is handled. And so I also have like a bookkeeper, I have an accountant, I have like a bunch of freelance people that are like either doing shorts or research or script writing. Like my team, could be as big as 50 people, but it's all dependent on the job that's coming in.
Yeah,
right?
100%. Okay, so you talked about ADHD. You talked about being all over the place. I love that you mentioned you wear so many different hats. And one, that's what everyone does when they're starting a business. But as you grow, you have 2 options. You can either start to wear less hats, or you can have ADHD and keep adding hats. And I do the latter. I know you do the latter.
It's a great feeling.
It's a great feeling. And it is one
starting
of the
projects and not finishing them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
so
baby.
It's one of the reasons though why you're successful. Like I would assume you see it this way. I definitely see my ADHD this way. I see it as a difference, not a deficiency. Like I choose to see it as a superpower. Now, the superpower has a backside, like everything in life that is a
Yeah.
superpower in your life. There's always going to be a backside that happens. But how do you navigate that? I did an episode on ADHD probably 3 months ago. People raved about it. There's so many creatives with ADHD. So, Chris, how do you work being someone with ADHD? What are the boundaries you put in? And guidelines, or maybe like a tactic you have here and there to help you actually push something over the line?
I mean, routine is like a really big thing for me. In terms of, and I'll kind of summarize this really quick. Like for my ADHD and like the way that I work is like routine plays a really big role. Like I need to get out of bed. I need to go on a walk right away because like natural sunlight and like physical activity plays like a massive role for me. I've also recently gone on like a low dose of Adderall, and that Adderall has really helped like hone in my focus. And when I first went on it, I really like would notice the high feeling that would exist where it's like I was dialed in and like I'd be like listening to conversations like so deeply, like staring into people's eyes and like really absorbing it. Right. And then lists are like so important for me. Like I can't be the person that someone's like, hey, can you get this quickly to me? And it's like a text. I'm like, if it's important, I'll literally be like, you need to email this to me because it needs to be in my inbox or I will literally forget about it because I am that person that can, and I'm sure a lot of people with ADHD relate to this. It's like, it's as simple as being like, I went downstairs to get a spigot to hold a light while I film a video. Then I get downstairs. I'm like, why am I here again? And then I make a coffee. Right. And then I'm like, oh, right a second. And then I'm like, right, I came to get a spigot. And so like, I need to make sure that like the environment that I'm also in is like conducive to me being like productive. It's like, if I need a spigot, then there's like the spigot drawer and it's like, where it is. And then you always put it back. Like so like organization plays a really like key role in like my productivity.
I love that.
And then 2, it's like, I do have a mentality of like, if it takes 5 minutes, you do it now. And if it takes longer, you put it on a list for like later on, because it when you were like asking for a bio, it's like, I'm not rolling my eyes at you. I'm going I can either write a bio or I can have like my bio that's on my website that you can just pull from. And then I just copy the link and then you have it now. So like, and I can do that now. Right. Versus 100%. Being like it takes, for me, it'd be like, takes just as much time to go to like my to-do list to be like, send Joey my bio.
Yes.
I love that. And then you're like, can you send that? It's just like, just do it now. So if it takes 5 minutes, I'll do it. And then I need to realize with my ADHD that like when something seems like a burning fire, it probably isn't. And so sometimes I just need to like process something for 10 minutes, let my like panic drop for that, like whether it's just getting up, breathing, and then putting it on the list and be like, you're going to get to it later. Like, or finishing a task, like is a really big thing for me. Like, it's like before this call, it was like 2:00 and I had like another 4 minutes of like selects I needed to do for these photos from the weekend. I was like, just finish the selects. Like Joey can wait 5 minutes. You don't love that you're going to make him wait 5 minutes, but then at least the selects are done and then they're going to the client. And that will mean that you don't stress about it in the background when you're on the call. And so then managing expectations with people being like, hey, I just need 5 more minutes for X, Y reason. Thank you for being patient. And so I think a lot of it is just coming down to like communication, offloading things to other people when you can, like, which is a trust thing, lists, and then a combination of physical activity mixed with some form of like, whether it's, medication that is like something you get from your doctor, or if it's, a more holistic thing where, I know a lot of friends who have ADHD that will do like microdose of like a very low level of like psilocybin or something like that, which like in Canada you can get now like on the street, which is crazy. And so, experiment, see what works for you. But right now I like have really zoned in on being like, you must walk in the morning and then you must, maybe a little bit of caffeine, not too much that you like panic, and then a level of medication. And then if you can, which would be a perfect day, is I also get in like a proper pump at the gym because like having my muscles feel sore, like really does just help me like zone in more.
I love that. That's a masterclass on ADHD. So good. I love how you talked about organization too and how important your space is, because everything in your space is a potential distraction, right?
Yeah. Even
So,
down to your like digital space too,
oh,
right? Like it's
totally.
like, if you look at your desktop and it's chaos, like then you're going to be like, well, I should clean that up, or like,
Yeah.
or right, what that file, or like the random idea that you posted, like then your
Yeah.
brain starts
Or
thinking,
you're
it's
just
like, just try to
clicking,
like,
you click on one file and 20 minutes later, you're still clicking through random files on your desktop that you haven't seen in
yeah,
2
yeah.
years.
Or if
Yeah.
you know that your internet is shit and it like slows you down because you're like, oh, this takes like 2 minutes to load, and then you like go and get distracted and look at something else, be like,
Yes.
just upgrade your internet because it will just
Yep.
make you more like efficient, right?
100%.
And again,
100%.
not maximizing profits, but maximizing productivity.
Yeah. Yeah. Which then maximizes profits in the long run. Okay. Talk to me
Yeah,
about
right.
who's Chris Hau 5 years from now. I know you've got new dreams. You're always dreaming up new things. There's some stuff that you were just telling about before we jumped on this call that you're excited about, that you're pushing forward into the future.
Yeah.
Talk about We the Creators. What is that? How did that come to life? What's your dream for it? How can people get
Yeah.
involved? I would love for everybody listening to the show to hear a little piece of that. And then if there's anything else that builds into Chris 5 years from now, like, who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah. So, when I was really reflecting, like the past year, so like the last 4 years has just been like surfing the massive wave that has been YouTube. And with like algorithm changes and deeper reflection on like, at the end of like this past year, like I was not in a good place. Like I remember like it was like December 24th and I was still editing a video that had to go live before the end of the year, like contractually. And like it was something I was really proud of, but I remember just being like, I'm supposed to be on vacation right now and I'm still working. Like, when did I build a job that like makes me stressed and anxious? And like it all comes down to my like yeses and nos. But I was like, okay, you need to like figure out like how much is enough. So like whether that's like enough videos, enough of a break, enough of like finances, like you need to really define those things, so that, you know, you can go into the next year being 2023 with like better pillars and better priorities. And so I really made like two things a big priority for me. One was like community, and then two was learning. And so, this year for me, it's like the community. We've done two massive community events where we brought out like different YouTubers. We talked about like ADHD. We talked about depression. We talked about burnout. On the first one, we had like Julie Noki, Mark Bone, Lizzie Pierce, and myself on like the first one. And then we did Becky Peckham, Patrick Tommaso, John Simo, and myself at the next one. And we kept like trying to level up. And really, it's like what we're trying to do is like add value in like community. Cause I think the focus has always been on building audiences online, but not building community. And I think community like is like what we're all craving. Like we're post COVID. We want to just meet other people. And what like my hope is that I wanted to create collisions for people. Like, it's like you come to the event, maybe you meet someone that you really get on with. And then that means that you guys are starting to like run a business together. You're collaborating, you're adding value to the world with your creativity. And I think that's like really important by like cultivating real community, because, you know, online you can feel like you're a part of a community, but it is a very different thing when you're like in a space with someone together making something like that. Is a very addictive feeling to do that, and to see that you created something out of nothing. So like really just like community first and giving back, because like the amount of like attention and time that people have given to me over the years, it's like I'm in this position where I can give back, whether that is through community events or knowledge or creating something bigger. I have like a bigger hope that I want to like charter a cruise ship one day and call it Creator Cruise, and then have these like activations where some of the rooms are booked out and everyone can learn. And then at each port, you can like book a photography class, a videography class, a storytelling class, and you can like go out and then you come back and there's like editing sessions. Like I have this like whole cool dream for that.
That's beautiful.
So like
I love that.
I manifest that at some point. I have like all the right pieces in place to like try to make that. So like really it's like I'm always, and maybe this comes back to like the bigger thing. It's like we did the first event, we only did like 50 spots. And when I sold out those 50 spots, I was like, okay, this can be something, in the same way that like getting $100 brand deal doesn't mean that every brand deal is $100. It means that the next one could be 200, the next one could be 500, the next could be something. So I looked at like these community events as being like, okay, the next one we did, we sold out 100 spots. And so like maybe that scales up and we do more, and then we do them globally. And then I want to use that as like a launching point to, connect creators with the people that they like admire online and whatever it might be. Like, I think right now it's very grassroots and I just want to keep it that way. And eventually it will turn into something that's more like, has structure to it, and it has consistency and everything else. But right now it's like, this is just my way of like, how do I give back in something that feels good for the people around me? because this is like the stuff that like lights my soul, and I just want to see other people like really winning from it.
Mm.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I'm building up this collective called We the Creators, which really stemmed from like my paying attention to what is happening in the industry when it comes to like brands. And this really is like brands, and my conversation with brands is that more and more brands are coming directly to creators to spend the money that they would normally spend at an agency to then spend on the creator to make the thing, because they're kind of starting to recognize that creators specifically are the ones that are like getting the shorthand of the stick, and then the ones that are working the hardest. And yet there's all these like middlemen in the business side that are just trying to get their hands in the pot, and they say that their value is that they sell creativity or they sell strategy, but it's like the brand knows at the end of the day like what strategies are going to kind of work for them. So they're really just looking for like content creators. And so We the Creators is really essentially like and it's no shade on agencies. I think certain agencies do add a lot of value, but there are certain other ones that don't. And so the whole like tagline for us right now, and again, this is still like a work in progress, is like We the Creators. It's like your agency hired us to do the job, so why not just hire us, right? It's kind of like the essence of it, right?
Come on. I love that. It's like outlaw creators, cowboy. It's like the Wild West of creators. We're taking it back. Coming straight to us.
And you know, I think a lot of it is that we, and I really hope this feels empowering for a lot of people that are listening right now, is that there are, you know, agencies we crave, or like, we need the agency, we need representation, we want them. But like the reality is like the agency needs you to fulfill the contract for the company that they're working with. So like there's a song by like Ed Sheeran that was like his whole like anti like music label thing was like, you need me, man, I don't need you.
Yeah.
And I just like, I'm kind of in that same mentality a little bit with this like creator space now. It's like the agencies are great, but I think what happens in part of the process that I've seen is that the agencies are also trying to prove their value to the brand. So like what happens is like the creator will make the thing that they want to make, and then the agency will come and nitpick it apart so that they can then show the brand, hey, look at what value we have. Look at how great we are at like re-strategizing or re-editing this. And then at some point, things just like don't get out on time. Things are just lack soul because no one wants to take risks, because everyone's just trying to like prove their worth without taking a risk on their job. And so at the end of the day, we just have a bunch of money making things that no one's really that stoked on, to then like go out into the world where everyone's like, cool, that exists now. And then you're not even proud of it. Whereas like, I'm like, if you just take out a lot more of these like middlemen, ultimately like we can do more. So really this is like what I want to do is, I'm not calling like We the Creators an agency, I'm calling it a collective. Like what I want and how I hope some of the people that are listening to this to participate is like, if you're a producer, if you're a director, if you are a art director, if you're a sound engineer, like people who work in more of this like traditional media space, or if you are someone that is like, and I call them, you know, the quote unquote, from like the words that we used to define it before, the predator, the producer, director, editor, you know. Sorry, 1 second. I'm just getting a call that I don't want. We'll go back here. If you are this person, I want to connect with really talented people around the world, because my bigger goal with this like video production company is that I want to like bring the power back to the creator, and I want to provide jobs for my friends. Like that's like my bigger goal now, is I want to provide jobs for people. Because like, I was really reflecting on like, what's the thing that I have the most pride in? It's the fact that like this YouTube channel and this business that I've built provides a full-time salary for like Lucas, my editor, and where he can pay for his rent, he can pay for and like live a good life. And I go, man, how rewarding is that? And now here I am like in this interesting privileged position where brands are coming to me being like, hey, can you build a commercial for me? And I don't have the time to do it myself, but I'm going, hey, Simon's amazing director, Jorge's an incredible DOP. Right. I know some people. Why don't we get these like outlaws together, these amazing, talented, creative people, give them the work. I can either like take a small cut of it and, or just or just be involved as like talent, or like the one that is like the packager. Like I'm the person that takes all of the pieces and puts it together, and that's the value that I can provide. Right. And so I've been going a little bit more on like, I want to build this like collective, and the collective also has this side like events thing where we're just giving back. It's really like a give back. That's a give back business, not a charity, but it's a business that like takes the power out of the people who have taken it from us.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. That's so cool, man. We could continue to talk for hours and hours and hours, but let's wrap up. So we got two questions to wrap up the show. First one is very simple. Where can people find you? How do they connect with you?
I mean, if you want to just have like the main port where you can find everything, if you just go to like the Chris Hau, HAU.com, you'll find all the socials, you'll find products, you'll find courses, you'll find whatever you want about bio, pictures of me, whatever it might be. It all exists in that place. And then there's a newsletter that you can sign up for that will give you updates on different things that are going on in life versus like whatever it might be. And then they're on the socials, the Chris Hau on all of those things,
Yeah,
because there's
love
a
it.
hockey player that got out of, I don't even know where it is, but he got the actual Chris Hau handle. Maybe one day I'll get that, but for now I'm the Chris Hau.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I never knew that. And we'll
Yeah.
link all that stuff in the description of the podcast, guys. So if you're listening and you want to just jump straight to that, head down to the description. Last question, Chris. This is the signature question for the show. The ethos behind what Creativ Rise is. Again, we're trying to build a world where more creatives succeed while doing what they love. Why does it matter enough to go for it? Why should someone be looking at whatever their creative passion is going to be, their dream is going to be? Why should they go for it? Why was it worth it for you, and why should it be worth it for them?
It's going to sound morbid a little bit, but I've always subscribed to the mentality of like memento mori, which is just like remember that you die. And although that it's like a really like kind of like I said before, a morbid concept, the whole idea is like if you just reflect on the fact that like our universal thing that ties us all together is that we will not exist on this planet at some point in our lives, like what does it matter at some point if you're not going to hurt anyone and it's not going to put you in such a horrible position? Like just go after it. It's your life. It's important because your voice is important. And whether it impacts one other person or a million people or 100 million people or 20 people, it just matters that you tried so that at least one, you can look back and say, hey, at least I gave it a good shot versus just letting a dream be a dream and dying with that dream.
So good. So good. I was going to say you could drop the mic, but your mic's on a stand. So, dude, thanks so much for being on the show. What a great answer. For me and the rest of the team behind Creativ Rise, we've been excited about this interview, and I cannot wait for people to hear this. So thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you so much. This is great. As we were talking before, I was having a really rough day, and I think these act as like a bit of a therapy session rather than looking at this as a means to, I have to check mark another thing off the PR list. It's like here's two humans just talking very openly and candidly about the things that they love, and I think this really does light a spark and like remember why you started.
100%.
It's easy to get caught up in the nuances of your day-to-day job, but this is what matters is like these conversations. So thank you.
Yeah. Sharing what we know and helping people climb, like we've talked about so much on this episode. So, dude, thanks so much for being here. Thanks, Chris.
Of course, man. Absolutely.
Well, if you made it through that entire episode, holy guacamole, that was a phenomenal, long but phenomenal episode with Chris Hau. Chris, huge thank you for being on the show, man. I hope today's episode was just such a good use of your time. It is so cool when we get insight into someone like Chris Hau's life, into how he's built his businesses. He's had multiple of them now. I hope you know that now because you got to listen to the show. Such a cool thing to get insight on how Chris has created a world where he gets to do what he loves for a living and get paid for it. That is the goal of the show. That's the goal of why we do what we do here at Creativ Rise, is to help more creatives just like yourself listening to the show get paid to do what you love for a living so you can create a world where you wake up every day and go, gosh, like I love this. I love that I'm succeeding at what I love. And so one of the best ways to do that is if you just keep listening to the show. We'd love to invite you back if you are new. If you're a returning listener or subscriber, thanks for being here. I hope today was so valuable for you. But if you're new, make sure you subscribe to the show, and that way you can listen to it next week. Every single Wednesday, we drop a new episode strictly on creative business, something to do with how you can continue to make your business more successful so you can do what you love for a living. So I'd also love to invite you, if you're loving what you're getting from Creativ Rise, to our free trainings coming up on August 23rd, super soon, 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be talking about how to become a six-figure creative, 3 pillars that make great, phenomenal, sturdy, consistent six-figure creative businesses. And I would love to uncover those for you, show you how you can implement those into your own life this year so that your business can grow, ideally in the back end of 2023 and going into 2024 more than it ever has. So, Chris, again, huge thank you for being on the show today. I hope you guys so enjoyed that. Make sure you take a screenshot of this post or this podcast, post it on your Instagram story, and tag Chris and tag Creativ Rise. It's one of the best ways to actually thank the guest is by sharing what you might have learned. Like, hey, Chris, I love that you said this, blank, blank, blank. Share what your takeaway was on your Instagram story and tag him so he can see it. That's a great way for him to just hear how you're grateful for everything that he gave you insight on today. And again, we'll see you next week from me, Joey, and the rest of the team here at Creativ Rise. Cannot wait to see you next week. Can't wait to see you on our community free live training coming up on August 23rd, 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. Link in the bio if you want to register for that, or go to creativrise.com/6-figure creator. And we will see you there. See you on next week's episode.